Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and patch 5.0 has been out for a little over a week now, so I feel like now is appropriate to start theory crafting for the future. And when I mean future, I mean the 41st millennium. We've all heard the rumours and it does feel like some subtle hints, or sometimes not so subtle hints, have been introduced into Warhammer 3 just to kind of show that yes, it is indeed possible. I know a lot of people say that Total War 40K will never work, but these are the very same people that said Warhammer Fantasy would never work because single entity monsters, dragons, magic, blah blah blah, and I mean here we are, right? Almost 10 years later, which is just insane. So yeah, let's sit back, relax, and talk about a bunch of stuff because I'm feeling kinda excited for the possible future. I don't imagine that we'll hear about it anytime soon, but yeah. Time will tell. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the steam tanks, right? Directional armor is something that used to exist back in the day of the rules for Warhammer. It hasn't for a while in the Warhammer settings, but it is a lore-friendly thing. I think it still might exist in 30k though. I have literally no time to play 30k, which is a massive shame because the models look great. Basically what it means is depending where you're shooting at the steam tank, it takes more damage or less damage. If you're shooting from the very front where it's very heavily armored, it'll take less damage as obviously that's more protection. On the side, you'll take a bit more damage as, yeah, you know, it's a little bit less, and then on the rear, it's going to be at its most vulnerable state. Now, if CA wants a real blast from the past, they could easily add in some deep striking rules where you could deep strike a character onto a Terminator and watch him die. Yeah, when you would deep strike a character, it would sometimes go horrendously wrong. Alongside that, the steam tank performs a lot better and, you know, has, 3 different arcs of fire in a much better way than it used to be. It actually performs like it is a tank with multiple weapons. When it gets into melee combat, it still performs very well, with the steam cannonade actually still acting as it should do, trying to fire around. You've got the guy on the top firing, which is kind of like having one of the commissars peeping out to fire, which, you know, it's a common thing. In a lot of 40k tanks, you could basically have just a character peeping out, well, character or a standard unit peeping out just with a bolter or something. There's a thing in Warhammer Fantasy also, but it just feels more like a 40k thing. And it doesn't look as impressive when it's just a basic steam tank because we've seen it since Warhammer 1, but when you start looking at it through the eyes of a mod, like for example a looted steam tank, it looks very 40k. It looks very, very 40k, and that's pretty much what it is. You know, it's like a Lehman Russ. It's a looted Lehman Russ. Or Chimera, probably better said, but yeah, I'm just using an example here. But yeah, it looks so different because it's clearly inspired by more of a 40k thing, and I'm telling you that the more I see stuff like this, and obviously Total War Millennium, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the more the modders start showing off the capabilities of the engine. As weird as it may be right now, it just feels like, yeah, this is possible. If modders are doing stuff like this, then it's very obvious we're going to be able to start seeing the devs do a little bit more because they've got more unrestricted access to the engine itself. Now, I do believe that we are getting a new engine, but I honestly think it's just like a upgraded version. We're currently in Warscape 2.0, so it might just be Warscape 3.0 or a new engine built off the skeleton of the last. Essentially a brand new Total War engine without all the tech debt. A completely new tag was added in the form of gunships for the Thunder Barge. Now this is pretty interesting because they likely made the new tag just to see if it breaks the game or not, because there's only going to be one unit. That could easily be just called a flyer and be done with. I very much doubt that we'll see extra gunships coming in unless there's something hidden away for Grand Cafe, but the Empire, even though they had like kind of like war balloons and stuff, it just really doesn't fit with the Empire, to be honest. We're expecting a load of gunships when it comes to 40k, Valkyries and so on. So yeah, I imagine that this is a bit of a test to see if tags will not break stuff. There's going to be a lot of new tags coming in, so they're probably just trying to see how adding in a new tag would work for a live game right now to see if anything breaks on a live game, because while they're doing a development on a new title, this could be the 40k game, this could be the World War I one, it's more of the case of it's always better in action than it is on an experimental build that they can tinker around with. Lazy health bars are pretty interesting. You see, I didn't think anything of it. I thought that was just for multiplayer, but a lot of people have been saying, no, this is clearly for something where there's going to be a lot more damage radius, and it's very noticeable now when you're actually killing off units. I guess it'll be more noticeable when you start coming into las cannons and stuff, doing damage to other single entities where a big chunk of health is going to be taken off. Either way, this is a hint or not, I actually just kind of like it. It looks cool, right? It's something really different and it's satisfying. And then obviously we have to look towards the gunpowder-based armies. We're starting to see more and more armies which are just focusing on bullets and stuff. There's not going to be that thing in 40k. Keep in mind that there's a lot of melee still in 40k. But in theory, you could be able to have just a bunch of shooters if we get the Tau, for example, the Imperial Guard, and just a lot of other factions. This is pretty obvious when you start looking towards multi-shot weapons becoming more of the norm. Repeaters was something that we were supposed to get, and then for some reason we didn't. I'm thinking Games Workshop. But you know, a repeater handgun has that whole feeling of semi-automatic, so just a few shots every now and then, multiple volley fires. It's something that you're going to be seeing a lot in 40k. I don't imagine that it's just going to be firing constantly, because that might be kind of broken. But yeah, think about the repeaters, think about the standard one-shotters with the snipers, for example, all the artillery pieces, the handgunners, the steam tanks. All that is going to be translated fairly well, I think, with a little bit of polish. Right now, as it stands, it's perfect for fantasy, it's perfect for like Napoleonic warfare. Hell, we were streaming Carl Franz recently on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. You should pop by the way, I should be streaming today too. And yeah, you know, it felt like Total War Napoleon, just fantasy style. Stuff like this has been kind of shown off about a year now for Total War Millennium. This is the more modern warfare, well, not too modern, but you know what I mean. Mod for Warhammer 3, it's pretty much had the feeling of that for a while. The difference is obviously it's not as refined as a full product would be with a few years of development. Again, this game has a lot of tech depth, but we can see, you know, really cool looking tanks, really cool looking stuff. Most of the tanks in 40k, well, the standard Firstborn Marine ones, not so much the Primaris ones, are very heavily inspired by World War I and World War II tanks. And even with a game that this is not really meant to be built in, those units move around fairly well. They're still a little jank, but again, you know, it's a mod that is being introduced, and it doesn't have all the full capabilities that the Creative Assembly staff would have in the back end. I still think Creative Assembly has been hinting this since day one, because, yeah, there is a chainsword in-game when you play through the Realm of Chaos. I do believe that you can also get it through Immortal Empires now, too. And Creative Assembly have never really been shy about hinting towards future stuff in their current titles. You might remember in Warhammer 2, during the Twisted and the Twilight, there was an event that talked about bears a lot, and people possibly riding them, which was hinting towards Kislev. When that was discussed, a lot of people shook it off as an Easter egg, and Kislev's never going to happen, Kislev's never going to happen. Same thing with Grand Cafe, right? But yeah, looks like speculations were correct. And if a Total War 40k is actually happening, that means that development would have had to start around the time of Warhammer 3's development too. This would be the pre-production, art concepts, ideas, writing up stories, sending that to Games Workshop for approval. I can't imagine how long the process for game development with Games Workshop can be. I've heard devs from many different companies say it takes a long time, and in some cases they switch around stuff at the very last minute, which I imagine is very frustrating. Now you might be wondering why I'm discussing this now, and simply put, I really think that we're getting closer and closer to an announcement for a Total War Warhammer 40k, and this would be very similar to how it happened to Warhammer 3. There will be a trailer, it will go dark for a while, then I think about 4 or 5 months later there'll be the first gameplay reveal, then it will go dark for a while once again, but at that point interviews and lore tidbits and so on should be starting up, so they'll probably announce it either at the end of this year or at the start of next year, because the rumors kept saying 2025 or 2026. There's obviously loads and loads of rumors about how much is left for Warhammer 3, but that could actually change depending on how many people end up buying Thrones of Decay and the future DLCs, but it's not going to earn as much money as a Total War 40k game, and that one will be the big monolith that Creative Assembly have been waiting for. It's going to be a lot, and I mean a stupid amount of money. Time will obviously tell, but I saw the parallels with the Kislev stuff, and it's like, okay, this is starting to get really interesting. We're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I really think we're getting super close. There might start being proper hints soon. There is no need for Creative Assembly to say, oh yeah, we've expanded our relationship with Games Workshop, like what they did when they announced Warhammer originally back in 2012. But other stuff might be coming to light. I mean, at some point Valrak is just going to start screaming into a microphone that it's coming, and then we'll all know. I imagine that even Valrak will know before the actual Total War creators with NDAs will. But yeah, if you're interested in talking about some 40k or even just some Warhammer in general, pop by to twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges today. We will be streaming some, I think Belagar is on the menu today, so that's going to be kind of fun. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It does really help the channel out to fight the algorithm and so on. We're getting close to 100k. It would just be nice to hit it this year. It doesn't cost you a thing, it just really helps the channel get a little bit more notice with YouTube, which would be lovely. But again, with all that being said, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.